And we look and YouTube Live. It's Coach Rowe and Coach Taralyn. We're here for another episode of Taralyn Michelle and Billy Wroe Live. Stay tuned. We're about to jump straight into this thing. And we are back. Welcome. Hello, Taralyn. My gosh. I don't know what happened to Tuesdays. They used to be so peaceful. And now they are anything but peaceful. But that's all right. That's okay. We are here holding to our commitment.
Lucky for you, you have no hair because then you don't have to worry about losing hair.
Now, all that's going to happen is this little salt is going to turn the corner and go all the way around. It's going to be icy. I'm like, ooh, you know I'm icy. That's how I'm be. It probably like 1 year from now, but that's okay. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Oh, great. This is a strange show for me because it's the first time that I feel like we're going into a show and we haven't really spoken a lot in the last week, but
I know.
What the heck?
Yeah. This should be interesting. I was thinking that same thing.
That's all right. Our conversations are always our conversations. So for those of you who are joining us live, welcome. We have a pretty good topic. This is how we actually talked about a while ago. Tonight's topic is going to be spouse value. I think last time I started first on what the topic meant to me. So I'd like for you to lead us off tonight on what this topic, particularly of spouse value, means to you.
Wow. And you would start with me. You know what? This for me is this is going to be an interesting conversation because I think that for me personally, when I think about spouse value, I'm traditional in a sense. I wouldn't say completely because there are some things where I've grown to understand that my belief system was based on a lot of what I always saw and that I don't necessarily agree with. But when I think about spouse value, I think about two people coming together who have an understanding of what endurance is going to be, a mutual respect is going to be, and being in that space of allowing some flexibility when it comes to the compromise and growing together. So in short, I think it would be a lot about moral code. It would be a lot about dedication and a lot about selflessness. Those are the things that come to mind for me.
Selflessness. That's a lovely word.
It
For me, when I was thinking about this particular topic, I started thinking about it almost was reminiscent to me of the representative conversation we had and how people will pursue somebody and then get that person as their spouse or as their partner or whatever it may be. We'll say obtain that person because I feel like that's what this mindset is. They'll obtain this person and then they roll back the pursuit. They take their foot off the gas and they just allow the relationship or the marriage in this case, because we're talking about spouses, the marriage to fall into this toxic cesspool of mediocrity.
Cesspool.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking about this spouse value, that's what I was thinking about. And I was thinking about, how a lot of times people don't really know how a marriage is, like the internal health of a marriage. They just know what is presented on the outside.
Mhm.
But when the marriage comes to an end, then all this stuff comes to the surface. Oh, he didn't ever listen to me. We never spent time together. Oh, we never did anything. Oh, he was always out with his boys. Oh, she was always out with her girls. All this stuff starts flowing to the surface at a later time. And so when I think of spouse value, I really think about how to maintain the value that you signed up for the day you said I do, and how to increase that value versus allowing it to diminish and decrease. So, or deflate, I guess, for economic.
Yeah, you know what? With all that being said, I think I would add to that because I think that people have unrealistic expectations for what a marriage is supposed to be. And I say this because just from talking to a lot of women, um, just being in the cipher, the circles of, how we cat.
Yes.
You're like, yes, I know. I know you do because you have a lot of female
Well,
friends.
because everybody calls me girl. They're like, girl, I don't know why we get this.
Guilty.
That is not my preferred pronoun.
You have been girl, I don't know how many times to the point where I'm like, boy, don't worry about being girl. Let me tell you something.
Right.
But I think that there are conversations that I'm privy to where you have people who want to be married but are sitting back talking about everything that they're not going to contribute to somebody they have yet to beat or to commit to. And I'm just thinking, well, I just don't think that that's the attitude to have because whatever it is that's of value, and I'm talking basic stuff. I'm going to get super basic. The women who will, he can cook for himself. Well, I mean, if that's something that he values, and let's just keep it real, when you're a mature person like we are, um, at minimum, we cook for ourselves every day.
Mm-hmm.
At minimum, we clean up. At minimum, we do laundry. Whether you have a woman or a man, it does not matter. That's just a part of everyday basic care. So I'm like, okay, you want to be married, been single for some years, but when you get a man, you're not cooking for him. And again, I'm not talking the whole gender role thing or whatever. You may have your career, he may have his, and you guys may travel and see each other when you see each other. But if one of the things that he values is cooking, why would that be off the table and you haven't even met him yet? I mean, I don't know. So I think there's that part of it that I think about. Some relationships that they've probably seen previously, relationship, maybe their parents when they grew up. I think a lot of people go into thinking about marriage or into marriages with these preconceived notions and don't understand that that is your union with your person. You guys get to decide what kind of marriage you're going to have, what the rules are, what the parameters are, where is the give and take. You guys get to decide that. That's not a cookie cutter thing where every marriage has these 10 boxes on them and you have to check them all and boom, you have a great marriage. I don't think that people are flexible when it comes to that.
Yeah. It's interesting because when my wife and I were first dating, I remember, I can't remember now if I was at my apartment or if I was at her house, but I remember her saying, well, I don't cook. And I was like, well, I didn't ask you if you do cook.
Problem
Um,
solved.
yeah, because I know how to cook for myself. And like you said, as a responsible adult, you have to know how to cook for yourself, or you gonna be eating junk food and overspend your budget on food because somebody has to make the food for you. And so, like in that, what she was saying, because we had a conversation about it later, she was saying, "Well, I'm not the type of person who's going to cook you a home cooked meal every single night." Hey, that's cool. And I could tell that that was one of her things. Hey, if I get with a man, he gonna need to know I'm not cooking every night. That's not gonna be my role because in her mind, I work too. Hey, okay,
Mhm.
great. But the way when you have these preconceived notions about what you are not going to do, and you just have hard rules. Well, I ain't gonna cook for no man. He needs to get up and make his own plate and all that type of stuff. Then you don't leave room for someone to come in and change that through nurture. Because if it's never going to change, why am I going to nurture trying to make it change? And
Right.
so one of the things that I did with my wife while we were dating is it was like, well, let's introduce a couple nights a week where we get in the kitchen and we cook together. Um, and so we called them pinners. It was we go to Pinterest, we get a meal, and that's the meal that we would cook, and we'd follow the instructions of the meal. And in that, I noticed there were more times then that were where she would just be like, "Hey, babe, I'm making dinner. Do you want to come over? Hey, I'm making this. I'm making this tonight. I'm in the mood for spaghetti. Do you want to come over and eat?" And so nurturing that now in our marriage, when there's times where she'll cook, there's times where I'll cook, but I can honestly say almost every time one of us is in the kitchen cooking, the other one comes in and says, "Hey, what do you need me to help with, or is there anything you need me to help with?" And if the answer is no, then the answer is no, and then they go on about their business. But I think you're right. When you have these hard, "I'm not going to do this for no man, I ain't going to do this for no woman," um, yeah, you create, you start digging out the trench for the cesspool that you go have, because all of a sudden somebody who does come into your life who values the fact that you've made a meal, who values the fact that you participated in making a meal, uh, feels like, well, they don't really value the fact that I see someone cooking with me or for me as a form of nurture to me. And when you're in a marriage, that is like, honestly, the thing that keeps the marriage going is nurturing. Like, you can either let your marriage shrivel up and die, or you can nurture it and help it. May not guarantee it, but help it to flourish.
Right.
Um, so I agree with you on that, in the aspect of, I ain't gonna do this. I was like, look, there are things that I won't do for someone who is not my wife,
Mm-hmm.
but there are very few things that I will not do for my wife.
I think too, just in listening to you, it's effectively communicating what matters to you and why. Because it sounds to me like when she was saying, "Hey, I don't cook," at some point in time, there was pressure put on her to produce that in a way that probably didn't flow with what she had going on when it comes to work or whatever the reason may be. But there was pressure put on her and a consequence if she didn't rise to that, be it just funky energy or an argument kicking off. It could have been anything. And so when I listen to you speaking, it sounds to me like the conversation, good thing you nurtured it, but let's say you were not that type of dude or not that type of girl when it comes to what the guy says he's not doing, because this could go either way. um, Being able to effectively communicate what your boundaries are and why those are there. Hey, you know what? I don't like the pressure being put on me for that. I have other things going on, and because I don't want the pressure. I don't rock like that. If I happen to think of it and I'm in the mood and I'm on a whimsy, fine. But the expectation that that's what I'm going to do, I know I'm not going to do that like that, and I don't want the possible consequence that could come with that. So therefore, I don't do that. That's a different and I don't think a lot of us do have those types of conversations. If you feel that way, fine, you're entitled to that, but to help the person understand where that's coming from, especially if that's something that they value. But that brings me to the point of communicating effectively, period, in the beginning of a relationship, beyond the fact that, okay, clearly there's a physical attraction if we're dating
Right.
and we're hanging out. Clearly that's there. Clearly there are some things superficially you have in common. Like, I don't know, maybe you like comedies and she does too. Yeah, there's that. But then the deep conversations, like, because we're mature, and I think the majority of our viewers are mature as well. When you're deciding that you want to couple up with somebody, like having some real conversations. What are some things that are triggering? What are some things that are turnoffs? Real conversation. Not, I had a girlfriend, and what makes me say this is I had a girlfriend say to me one time, well, uh, gentleman did ABC, and she really didn't like that, but she didn't say that because she didn't want to mess things up. Okay, but you don't like it, and
Right.
he's gonna repeat it because he doesn't even know that you don't like it. And let's just say that you say, you know what, I'm not feeling that. And he says, oh, well, okay. And you're not the one for him. Well, then you're not. That doesn't mean that there's not someone else, but be quiet to just savor the fantasy. And then he continues doing the same thing because he doesn't know. So those types of things, I don't know. I think that that's where a lot of the divide comes from. And
Yeah.
I don't know if men think of that the same way. I think a lot of the times with the ladies, there's the fantasy element. Well, I like where things are going now and I don't want to mess it up. So I'm not going to wholeheartedly own whatever my truth is, no matter how insignificant it is, because the guy or girl that's feeling you, doesn't matter what you do or say. They may look at that and say, "Ooh, that's different." But hey, it's not going to turn them off to the point where they don't want to talk to you anymore. It's just a feather in their cap, food for thought. I'll pay attention, duly noted. One of those types of situations. But yeah, I know that I know a lot of women who do that.
Well, I think, I guess the way I would say this is I think men used to do that in the sense of they would do anything to achieve the sexual goal.
Well,
So,
now,
so I'm gonna put up with X because I'm trying to get to Z.
it's
The
mind boggling.
the problem is that, or not, I don't even want to call it problem. The difference today is now I feel like men have been given an emotional voice. Whereas back in the day we didn't have an emotional voice. We couldn't say something like, hey, that really hurt my feelings,
Right.
because that was not going, she about to tell all your business to all the girlfriends. You know what he told me? That hurt his feelings, girl. Like, so
What do you
it,
mean? You have feelings?
right. And so it's like, because we are in a space now where men's emotional voice is growing, we are able to more clearly set better boundaries.
Yeah.
With my wife, I constantly, I tell her, like, my number one priority is peace, is maintaining my peace. If the relationship doesn't want to keep peace, hey, then that's the relationship. But Billy is trying to maintain Billy's peace, because Billy doesn't like who Billy becomes if he doesn't maintain his peace.
Ooh, that
And
part.
so, there'll be times where we're talking and I come to the realization that, oh, it's a miscommunication. And I accept that. And I say, hey, babe, it's a miscommunication. And she will sometimes keep going. And I have stopped at, it's a miscommunication. There have been times where, not even just her, where people have tried to tell me, well, you shouldn't feel like that. And I'm like, you don't get to tell me how I should feel because I'm the one feeling it. Um,
Yeah.
and so having that, especially that dynamic in a marriage, when you talk about having those deeper level conversations, it is about unpacking some of that stuff. Hey, this is why I feel this way. I tell people all the time, don't come at me with that passive aggressive stuff, because I'm an A1 type, fit straight to full on aggression. You go, no, I'm being aggressive. We ain't gonna do nothing passive about my aggression. So
Except your passive brings out my aggression. you know.
right. So don't approach me with passive aggression. Don't, just approach me with communication, and we can work through challenges. We can work through disagreements and arguments.
Right.
But what we won't work very well through is aggressive or aggression.
Yeah.
And so those deeper conversations also, I think, align with how a lot of people court. A lot of people court their spouse with the questions like, tell me your favorite color, tell me about what your childhood was like, tell
Right.
me what you like to do in your free time. And none of those things tell you anything about the present person.
Right.
They tell you about the past person more than the present person.
Do you
um,
think that? Do you think that? Do you think that there's a fear of knowing? Because I don't know. Maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. I think that kind of stuff is interesting. You know,
mhm.
tell me right now, top three turnoffs. Go. And it's
For me personally,
no, I'm just like men. They're just sit there
oh,
stuck.
I was gonna say, if you want me personally, please believe I
No,
got some
they'll just sit
turnoffs.
there.
I'll tell you right now.
They'll sit there stuck. Like, well, what are we talking about? Any top three? It could have anything to do with anything. Top three turnoffs from a woman that's in your life, a significant other. Go. Those are the types of conversations I like to have. Stuff where you're like, "Ooh, do I want her to know me like that?" Well, what are we here for?
Right.
That's the point. If you tell me your top 3 and I'm still sitting here, then okay. Want to know mine?
Right. And we'll see if you're still sitting here.
That part.
Yeah. And so I think that there is a disconnect in the courtship phase of getting married. And this is why we end up having this devaluation of our spouses um, in certain relationships, is because you've only talked about the past person, the past ex, the past job, the past life, the past places that you've been. And in that, it's really hard to then jump the broom, so to speak, the proverbial broom, to jump that broom. And then all of a sudden, now what you're supposed to be doing is the present and moving forward. And a lot of times the conversation stops. So like on my phone calendar, I have an intentional check-in with my wife. It's on there to just give her a moment to debrief about her day, because the day is the present. It might be the same as yesterday, might be the same as the day before, but the day today is the present day. And it's something that I put on my calendar, and I also put a note on there that says this is not a task. This is not, oh, I gotta go and talk to you and hear about your day today. This is that nurture, to nurture that communication, to have that investment that, hey, I love and I care about you. And even with all that I have going on in my own individual world, I still want to value and nurture what we have and try to put fresh soil and fresh nutrients into that. And I don't think when I was younger I understood how to do that, because it was just, I'm living my life, I'm doing my thing. If I see you, I see you, and we're strangers in the night, passing ships in the dark. Like that's what I was. But now I'm learning how to be more intentional about making those investments, because if this is somebody you're supposed to be spending the rest of your life with, look, you gonna have a lot of conversations, and the last thing you wanted to be like is when you was in junior high and high school. What you doing? What you doing? Breathe, breathe, breathe. What you doing? What you doing? Breathe, breathe, breathe. You hang up. No, you hang up. Look, I didn't play those games. I'd be like, hey, look, I'm tired. I'm about to get off the phone. No, you can't get off the phone. Well, I'm either going to get off the phone or fall asleep on it, but that's your choice. Did you get the hello? Hello?
Right.
Oh, I fell asleep because I was really serious about that. So I think this is the way that I am learning to increase that spouse value, that spousal value in my own relationship. And I guess at best, it's an experiment to see if that provides the nutrients that will help the relationship overcome challenges in the future, overcome, I guess I would call them lulls in activity in the future. And we'll see how it works out. I don't know. I'm only 5 months in, so I don't know.
Well, the thing about it too is we're evolutionary creatures. That the fact that you guys have a system in place to nurture one another is good, because you're both going to change over time. What her needs are today are not going to be the same 10 years from now. The same thing for you. You're going to grow into different people. Those things are constantly going to ebb and flow, So the fact that that component is there is good. I think a lot of the times for a lot of folks that's not there, and then being able to um listen, if anyone's out there dating, you have to be vulnerable, and that's hard for people. If you want someone that's going to be a good match, they need to know what doesn't work for you, what does work for you, and vice versa. And those conversations can be fun. They don't have to be heavy at all. They can be fun. They can be sexy. They can be erotic. They can be like you two at your own personal comedy club. It could be however you want it to be. But I think that some of the things, the quirks about individuals, including ourselves, we may take much too seriously. I used to be ridiculously serious to the point where, I mean, even thinking back on it, it's like crazy because I'm so ridiculously silly now, to the point where I'm the only one laughing at myself, and people are like, I don't get the joke. I'm like, yeah, you probably not.
Right. It's okay. I get it for both of us.
There you go. Sometimes they catch up a couple weeks later. Oh yeah, right. We here now. I'm that person. So, I think that a lighthearted approach to a lot of this stuff. Now things have gotten so serious. People are um so into what they want that there's not much of an opening for what the other person would want, and that troubles me, especially from the perspective of a coach, because that's why there are these huge gaps when it comes to uh relationships, and even people and they're being married, you know. So it's just it's troubling because there's some really phenomenal people out there. They're phenomenal people, men and women, that bring so much to the table, but both are coming in with their guard up, you know. And I think when you were talking earlier about your wife and having that nurturing and investing in your relationship, well, that's not easy, but you're choosing your hard. You're going to invest the labor that it takes to do the nurturing in the beginning or throughout the relationship, which is hard, or you're going to choose the hard, just do you, just let the
Right.
chips fall where they're made, and then one day she just like, or you're just like, you know, I don't think this is working, and you get divorce papers at work or something. That's not easy
Mhm.
either, you know. So both are hard. It's just one is intentionally being present, which requires for you to be selfless. You really do. There's times where you're good, but you have to make it a point to do that other thing to make sure the other person is good. There's that part, or or it's the latter. So the thing about having been someone who's lived some life, for the mature folks watching and listening and catching the replay, you know, because we've been there, done that. We threw that stick away and somebody picked it up and now it's the new stick to them, you know. But because we've been through that, I think now is the time for people to really and truly bank on all of the knowledge and experience that you've gotten up until this point and just put it all on the table, man. Put it all out there. And then if it's all out there and it is what it is, no BS, no masks, none of that, then you increase the chances of connecting to someone who's exactly where you are. They just want it all out there because they just want to be happy with their person, and that matters over anything else.
You know, that I do agree. They do want to be happy with their person.
Hmm.
Um, and I would even add to that, they want to be happy with their choice.
There you go.
The last thing you want in a marriage is buyer's remorse. Like that's the last thing you want.
Wow.
Like, God dang, why'd I pick this MNF?
A lemon spouse. Spouse who's a lemon. They got them janky rules. You like, wait a minute, nah, come on.
Right. But that makes me question, because sometimes I'm going to use cars as an example. If we were to go out and buy a used car, and we have that car, let's say, for a year, but we don't do any oil changes, we don't change any tires, we don't do any maintenance or anything like that, and the car breaks down, was the car a lemon, or did we just not care for it and did we not invest in it? And
Mhm.
I think about that when it comes to spousal value or spouse value, is how intentional we are in making the investment. It's almost like somebody saying, you know, oh, I can't marry a man who doesn't make six figures or more. Well, how committed are you to investing in a man to help him make six figures if he's not making it currently?
Now you
Uh,
know that is boy. Listen, and see that part. I did not mean it, but see that's another part right there. You know what? You just had it. I was just talking to someone today who's on our list for panel now,
mhm.
doctor, who's on our list because the conversation that you had that was around that, how women come with this prepackaged idea of a person, where men don't do that, and that you just said, that investment in time and self to help support someone in ascending in whatever way that could be, because that's basically what that is. You know, I don't understand why that's a bad thing. Because if we accept that we're evolutionary creatures until my grandmother used to say our head cools, until we're no longer here, if we're always going to be elevating, that means that you, as well as whoever you partner with, you should be ascending. If it's not year after year, you should be on a trajectory where you're leveling up, leveling up, leveling up throughout life. So then wouldn't it be fair to say that if you got with the man, then he would be supporting your evolution? No matter if he meets you and you're at $70,000 a year, if he meets you and you're at $40,000 a year, but you're gainfully employed, you're independent, you're taking care of yourself, you got decent credit, you just make 40 or 50 or 70, whatever your number is per year. Wouldn't that person be not only bringing a partner to you, but a support for what it is that you're doing financially, emotionally, spiritually? Wouldn't they be doing that? It's impossible for a man to be in a situation and he's not supporting you wherever you are. Well, then why would that be a bad thing if the shoe was on the other foot for your man? So I think that it's perspective. I think it's how people look at things. No one is, or I would dare to say they haven't reached the peak of who they're going to be and where they're going to be. I don't care if you meet him and he's at six figures. Well, he's going to continue to grow from there.
Right.
Had they ever considered that if you meet him and he's at six figures and he gets with you and he continues to grow, that if you're not bringing the type of support that he needs, well, now maybe you're not filling that slot the way he imagined. Maybe he wants a woman to be able to support him in that space. What if he feels like as he grows, you're not capable of doing that? That's a possibility. And I think those are not things that people think about. So, I can I wanted to say I can understand why some women feel that way. And the reason why I can dare to say that I understand is because I think that comes from a space of, I think it comes from a space of hurt. And then also to some women, the traditional mindset of having that security, that covering of a man, which I don't think, to each their own, but it's a difference in wanting a covering for one reason and then wanting a covering because maybe a woman doesn't feel like she can achieve that for herself. So having
Right.
somebody who already has it so that she could have access to it, and not just women. I think this is something that could be true for either side. Uh, in the end, it's just perspective is everything, and I don't think that meeting a quality person, a quality human being that can be an asset to your life and you can be an asset to theirs, and supporting them no matter where they are. A quality, and I'll say this, a quality. If you're a mature person, someone who's settled, someone who is secure at whatever level they are, someone who has figured out the basics. I don't see anything wrong with meeting a good person and you guys, if you click, building from where that is. You don't know what that could become. Maybe the missing piece to that man or woman taking it to six figures or whatever is meeting the right person, because some people just do better in a relationship. They
Right.
just do better being with other people. And I don't think it's anything wrong with that. I think that at the end of the day, that's what we're all meant to do. We're all meant to couple with somebody and grow together, you know?
Yeah. I think you touched on something though in the evolution aspect of that arc was, as we're all supposed to be ascending and growing, leveling
Mhm.
up. I think what happens is, and this could be for a man or a woman, is that people might think if I meet you at six figures and you select me or and I select you, we match up, um, you're less likely to leave me once you make six figures. I think sometimes that's the fear of ascension, is
Hmm.
that we might grow and go from ascending to actual departure. Um, and when you're in a space where there's fear, because that's just a fear of you're going to leave me, you're going to strike it big. I mean, I think about from the male perspective, if you have a very physically attractive wife, and let's say she does modeling,
Mhm.
the fear is that you're going to go on one of these modeling things and you're going to blow up and you're going to meet, I don't know, whoever the popular male actor is right now. And you're going to leave me for him. And
Mm,
wherever there's fear in any relationship, there can be no faith of the success of that relationship, because fear and faith can't operate in the same space.
right.
And so I think part of those, not in all cases, please believe, I don't think it's in all cases, but
Right.
in some of those cases where there's these preordained standards, um, the issue is that there's a fear of only having, as myself, if it's my fear, I only have so much worth or so much value. Why? Because you're not intentionally investing in the relationship. So that value doesn't increase, it stays stagnant. And as this person grows and gets further and further away from you, now all of a sudden it's like, well, you don't have the value to bring to the next level that I'm trying to go to. And at that point, it's kind of too late to start dumping in investments to catch up because we've created so much space. That actually happened in my last relationship where we just grew apart. Like, when they talk about, oh, well, we just grew apart. You're like, if you don't just grow apart.
Yes, you do.
You do when two people are growing at different rates, different paces. And one, myself being the person who was growing more rapidly, not having the patience to offer that hand back. So that's on me to say, hey, I'm growing and I want this relationship to grow as I grow. Come on, babe, let's go. And for that person to say, hey, he's growing, and almost to be paralyzed in fear that one day I'm not going to be enough for this person. And so it just created that gap to where eventually it was like, okay, well, I've grown to this space now, and the distance between us is so far that I'm not going to be able to be who I want to be at the next level with a relationship with this much distance. I'm just not that responsible. So I had to part from that relationship.
And I don't even think that's a shot to responsibility. That just it's dead weight. It's dead weight. Unless, you know what I'm saying? Because it's natural to, especially if you have someone that you love and that's your partner, it's natural for you to grow. And I think in everyone's mind, in a healthy relationship, you go where I go where you go. It's natural for, yes, we're gonna. And when that's what it should be. And so then to get to that space where I'm doing my part of the we're and you're not, then what does that leave for me? Because it's not like I haven't come across a situation, even in coaching, I haven't come across a situation where you have that gap that you describe and the person that's at the bottom is happy with that. I've never seen, and I mean, we're not talking like a little, where you should be doing this in a
Right.
relationship. There are points where you're doing this, but we talking like here. I've never seen a situation where the person on the bottom is happy with that. And it's like they're not happy with it, but then they're also not capable. And I'll just say capable, because belief is huge. If you don't believe that you can do something, then you won't. So you have the person who, for whatever reason, doesn't have the capability to do things, not just to catch up with their significant other, because it's not about that. If your significant other can be here and you can be here and you're happy with that, and you're able to be supportive and not sabotage or create an emotional and spiritual environment that's toxic, kudos. You know what I'm saying? But in this, there used to, back in the day, relationships were like that because men were the only ones working.
Right.
Women were just staying at home. So that dynamic worked back then. But now to be able to have that dynamic work, that takes a special type of person. You have to be completely and totally comfortable with who you are and where you are in life, be by your choice. Not you're there because for whatever reason you choose not to do what you need to do to get where you want to be. So when you have that gap like that, the person who's on the bottom, they're usually not having it because now they're feeling some type of way. So then it creates this whole dynamic that just becomes toxic, and it's just like being on this hamster wheel of negativity, the cesspool that you use that can be created within a relationship. And so that's what'll make it where the person who's on the top will say, well, you know what, in order for me to stay at the momentum that I'm on and continue what I'm doing, I have to drop this, because the toxicity and all of that, it cannot not affect you. It
Right.
can't. It permeates the environment of where you live physically and the environment of your temple mentally and spiritually. You can't. And so it becomes an impossible position for both people, you
Yeah.
know.
And it's a difficult space to be in, to navigate in the aspect of when you're thinking about spouse value, because again, um, part of that value is intertwined in what you pour into it. Not that you create the person's worthiness or their worth,
Right.
but you do create value of the relationship in the relationship. And so it's a really difficult space when you feel it's almost like if when you're a kid, did you guys ever waterfall drinks? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So it's almost like somebody trying to waterfall a drink, and instead of hovering over your mouth,
Right.
they try to do it from the top of the roof. it's it's
Never turns out well.
it's not gonna turn out very well.
Ever.
But that's what it's like when that gap is there, when that space is there, and the person on the bottom or the person on the top, because the person on the top can be resentful as well. Like,
Absolutely. We
yo,
were supposed to do this. My vision included us.
right. So the person on the top can be like, yo, you were supposed to be here 5 months ago. What's up?
Imagine if that goes into years. You're supposed to be at least there. I don't know. We go 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7. Here we are, 20 years.
Right.
Freaking heck.
I call that relationship Chinese water torture. You know, it's just a drip. It's one drip of water coming at a consistent rate, and eventually it feels like you're getting slammed in the head with a hammer.
Right,
But
right.
that's what takes place, is that you create this gap gets created, and it's like at some point that resentment, now instead of desiring to have you here with me or desiring to see you exceed and excel, now it's like, well, I don't have that, or you haven't helped me with that lately. It's almost like sales. You only as funky as your last cut. Oh, you ain't cut nothing this week. Well, I don't know why you talking to me about last week. We on this week.
Right.
And so it's challenging, but I think, again, this is an experiment, in I will know in 10 years if it works or not. I think in the attempt to nurture the relationship, my marriage that I have now, it's to the extent of understanding my wife has zero desire to be in a first row live or anything. Like, that's just not who she is. She likes to be in the background.
That
And
would shock the heck out of me.
I think what I'm gonna do here's what I would do, so everybody knows, if you ever see her, you know I won the bet. I'm gonna one day bet a wager on my win will be she has to come on the live show for at least 5 minutes.
5 minutes is too much for her.
No, but I make the bet worth it, because I
can't
don't know what
stand
she's gonna put on my side, so I know it's gonna be something heavy if I'm betting.
Oh yes, it's gonna be better than
Yeah,
yours.
I might have to pay for a whole trip. Well, I want to go to Jamaica. Okay, you're gonna be on first row for 5 minutes. I hope you're watching this as well.
Oh my goodness.
But
She will be eventually.
but the lovely dynamic that we have is, even though she doesn't, maybe from the first row perspective, we have a gap in inspirational speaking coaching, we have a gap, but in the aspect of growth overall, oh, there's no gap. We're both the same person in that.
Yeah, I was just about to say that when it comes to first row and what you do with that, that's completely and totally different. That's to me, that's not even in the same wheelhouse. That's just your thing. You know what I'm saying? Just like she has her thing. That's like that's apples and oranges to me, really. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To compare the two. But yeah, when you talk about just where you two are in terms of growth, I think that's the same, because you two have different trajectories of what it is that you do. That's never going to match up. It's just not, because you're just two completely and totally different in that way. But yeah, what do you think is probably something that people do in general that might impede them from being able to see somebody who's a probable good catch because of just skewed perspective? What do you think people do?
I think both men and women, self probably included, but present company included, we project. We project a couple different things. So sometimes we project fantasy. ooh, I want it to be like this, and this is going to be what it's like. Um, Sometimes we project previous experiences. Um, so we'll call them red flags, and then we'll dip on a red flag that the person, like you said, had no idea that what they did even bothered you, and that's why they keep doing it. So we don't even give them the information that, hey, yo, when you pop your gum, that gets on my nerves. And, and, and we don't give them that information, and we dip because they pop their gum. What? And so I think the most major downside for both men and women when it comes to missing out on amazing opportunities is we project. We project an image onto a surface that already has an image.
Mm.
And it's an attempt to shortcut the process of unveiling the image that the surface already has.
Also, too, I have to say that a red flag that's subjective, because just because something was a red flag back in the day doesn't mean that if you see something similar that's the same red flag that you had back then. It's a completely and totally different person, and that was something that was surprising to learn from me. That just because something is similar does not mean it's the same. Sometimes you have to not prejudge it and not have expectations. Just be in the moment and see it and say, but let it play out and see what it is, and then talk. Hey, what does that mean?
Right.
Something as simple as that. And then once you start talking to the person, you figure out, oh, okay, that was similar to something that I experienced before that was unfavorable. However, this is different. It started
Mhm.
off looking like that, but it's not the same thing. And then sometimes there can be some things that are the same thing, but where the person is coming from makes a difference. Once you get to know about them, something that because my mother always says people can't push a button that doesn't exist. Something that may push a button with you from something in the past, you start to learn more about the person that you're dealing with, and now the reason why that's there for them, it has context. It makes sense. It's not the negative experience that you had before, because this isn't the same person, and this thing coming from them means something completely and totally different than
Right.
when you saw it before. So I think being open to those possibilities, and it's, listen, I'm not talking about crazy stuff. I'm not. People be listening to this and they'll be thinking, well, he touching my son. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, no, you
I'm
get a
not talking
knife.
I'm not talking about things that are listen, there are some things that are just deal breakers off the jump. We know that. I'm talking about just quirky things about people's personality that we could have experienced something similar to back in the day. Being a little bit flexible, just speaking, articulating whatever your truth is. Get it, make that a point of conversation. I noticed you such and such and such. Do you do that all the time? Where does that come from? Just having a
Mhm.
conversation about it before prejudging it. I think that that could be something that would change a lot about what we think. It'll take and broaden us and show us that not everything is necessarily what it seems. And I think that we're so definitive now when it comes to a lot of things, and just the majority of things are just not definite. They're not.
Right.
They're not. I mean, think about some of the, if we as individuals think about some of the ridiculous things that we've done. Okay. Is
Exactly.
that thing you did that only you and the Lord you know about, you and the Lord know about, is that definite? Is that
Right.
definitive? Was that just a moment in time and a lapse in judgment? You
Right.
know?
No, you're right, and that comes when you say that red flag. That comes back to being like, even if there is a red flag, let's say there's a legitimate red flag, and like I'm with you. I ain't talking about something wild. I'm just talking
Right.
about a legitimate red flag, something that's
Right.
concerning. Um, I always ask myself, is this something that can be nurtured out? out, not forced out, but nurtured out. And I believe, like, even with my wife and I, as our relationship grows and we learn more about each other and we have those intimate moments, um, that there will be things that will be nurtured out of our relationship.
Of course.
One of the things for me is like being able to come home. I've had a rough go the past 2.5 weeks, but being able to come home and just being like, babe, when I get home, I just want to like curl up on the couch next to you, and I don't even care what we're watching. I'm probably gonna fall asleep, but I just want to be in your arms, and that for me creates a new dynamic of what peace can be versus peace being me having to go and isolate from everything so that I can have peace. Now I can introduce the concept to myself about my wife being present in my peace. And so that can, I don't know if it will completely usher out my independent moments of peace. Um, but I do think that it can begin to, what's the word? Starts with an S. Not circumvent, subsidize. It can begin to subsidize the need for me to always feel like I need to do the gain peace on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the same aspect with red flags, I feel like, again, we are trying to project an image onto somebody with very little information. Oh, I've seen that before. I know it's like watching a movie that's directed by a different person, different actors, probably different screenplay writer, and
Right.
they say one word from a movie you've seen before. Oh, I know what this movie's about. I've seen this movie type of movie before.
Right.
What? So I I feel like we sometimes cut ourselves short, unfortunately, and we miss out on some amazing opportunities, um, with people in general. Whether it's your spouse or not, we miss out on some amazing opportunities with people because of the fact that we are so quick to disconnect, even though inherently we want to connect. That's so strange to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it's the human way.
True.
It's just the way that it is. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that when it comes to this relationship thing, it's just not for punks. It's not. I mean, either it's you cannot be soft. You cannot. You have to be willing to put it all out there and let the person who you really want to connect with know exactly what they would be getting so that you can find out the exact same thing from that person. And at the end of the day, it's worth it. It's so worth it. It's not easy, but there's nothing that we do. When you wake up in the morning, I can guarantee you can say you at the end of the day, you'll say you have a good or bad day, but typically there's some type of challenge throughout your day. Always. Every single day of life is challenging, and life is challenging now more so than it's ever been. I had a conversation earlier today where we were talking about some of the stark differences in stress levels from today as opposed to 50 years ago. Just think about what life was like 50 years ago with all of these conveniences that we have. It brings in a whole different layer of things we used to didn't have to think about. Our parents did not have to think about,
Right.
so just life in general, just if you're running your business, if you're working a 9 to 5, if you're a mom, grandparent, if you're single, whatever, life in general is there's a lot of layers. There's so much. And so putting yourself out there to really be able to connect to your person, it's wonderful to be able to navigate that with your person rather than having to do it on your own. So I think that if
Or
there's
with
any
persons. Sorry.
right. Listen, that brought about a
Tickle me.
different no, because that popped into my Jesus, I just had a conversation earlier. Oh, my children, adult children are special. The conversations are different. especially with women. I'm like, you want me to what, girl? Listen,
Right.
I could not. I was like, you do understand that I'm your mother? Like, yes, that's why we're saying this. This is for
Mm.
your own good. Anyway, the conversations are different. You just wow, yeah, but mm-hmm. Just
No,
so
I, no, I trust me. I get it, but you're right. I think
oh,
the stressors are different,
yeah,
and I think technology makes us feel as like life is supposed to be easier, and it kind of allows you to get blindsided by these stressors that are kind of ever present, and they come in gently, but they're still just as destructive.
disruptive and destructive. They definitely can be. And if you're not intentional, if you're not cognizant of the forces at play consistently all around us, it's very easy to become hardened. It's very easy to be on an emotional roller coaster. It's very easy to end up taking a passenger seat
Mm.
in your life as opposed to taking the lead, and so it's worth it to have your significant other, to meet your person, to just show up, let the chips fall where they may.
Well, I think we can end right there. Um, I will close this out today with the coach's playbook. I do know you did that because you caught the bonus one last.
See,
I
see,
see. So now that you're getting it, I can actually go back to doing it sometimes.
I'm tired of you doubting me. Even though you've had reasons. Tired.
So let's see. As always with Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe live at the end of towards the end of the show, I like to share, or we like to share a couple of things that came up in the conversation. We call them the coach's playbook tools. Tonight, the tools that stood out from the coach's playbook. Tool number one was communicate why your boundaries exist. It's unreasonable to expect somebody to understand your boundaries if there is no communication as to why those boundaries are present. And it's also unreasonable to expect them to just go along to get along with your boundaries, even if they know the boundaries are present. To just, oh, well, since that's your boundary, we're just going to go with it. That's unreasonable in both aspects of that. So make sure you're communicating why your boundaries exist, especially when it comes to your spousal value. Realize that in a lot of marriages, you are your spouse's only source of a lot of things. Unless you want those things to be outsourced, um, you might want to communicate effectively to them why your boundaries exist and why you may or may not want to do certain things. Playbook tool number two is be vulnerable and disclose. Be vulnerable about how you feel, what you're feeling, especially in a marriage. If a marriage is supposed to be sanctified and sanctity, it's supposed to be a place where you can come and truly let down your guard, take off your armor, take off all or break down all the walls that you've put up between the outside world. This is your marriage. Be willing to be vulnerable in it, and realize that your vulnerability or willingness to be vulnerable is truly an act of nurturing the soil that's necessary for the other party to be vulnerable. So as you are vulnerable, that person will probably become more vulnerable to you as well, and it will just be this synergy that is created between both parties. And then lastly is tool number three, playbook tool number three is intentionally invest in the value.
That part.
The value does not create itself. The value is something that we, both parties, have to invest in order for it to have value. The reason why currency works today is because we have all agreed that currency has value. And because we all agree that currency has value, we will do things for one another in exchange for currency. The same thing works with your marriage. The same things works with your spouse. You have to decide that the marriage has value. The marriage is the currency. And the exchange that takes place is the acts of love, the acts of kindness, the things that maybe you wouldn't want to do, the meals for my wife, Mrs. Rowe, that you might cook, even though you said you don't cook. Those things, the marriage has the value. And so intentionally invest in that value. And the greater that marriage comes, you start finding that the things that you do are not really labor. They're not nuances or nuisances. They are really things that you want to do because you love investing in the actual marriage. So those are the three tools that we have for you tonight. Um, Really quick, because I seen something came up in the chat. Oh, okay, you got it. Never mind, you got it. um, but those are the tools that we have for you this evening. Any other closing thoughts that you have?
No, I think we wrapped it up pretty nicely in a bow.
All right, then let me go ahead and bring up, if you want more of conversations like this, tomorrow I will be hosting the Wednesday Word at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's on the First Row, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can catch me there. But if you miss me and you can't catch the replay, Taralyn is coming with the fire on the grind defined on Friday. That's at 4. I'm sorry, that's not at 4. Oh, it is at 4. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. New episodes every week. So we look forward to either seeing you tomorrow or seeing you on Friday. But then you can always catch us here next week. We will be in the studio live for Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe Live. Topic to be determined, but we will let you know on social media. The other thing is, and I'm gonna come off and ask you this live on air, no pressure, but I was thinking about us doing a coaches Q&A live, maybe like in 2 or 3 weeks from now, doing a coaches Q&A and just having people be able to come where we don't host the topic, but people being able to actually come and ask coaching topics from us. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Sounds like we'll talk.
I'm always down for whatever.
I know you're down for anything, but we'll talk. We'll figure out how to make it. But other than that, that's all I got for you guys. That's all we have. Thank you guys for tuning in live. Until next week, peace and abundant blessings. I've taken from your book.
There you go.